back to yet another section of Indian writing in English literature. In our last class, we went through the summary of the novel Roots and Shadows. We also discussed the marital life of the protagonist Indu and her husband Jayant. Roots and Shadows, Shashi Deshpande's second published novel, is the winner of Tirumadi Renkamal Award. Written earlier than The Dark Holds No Terrors, but published later in 1983. It is much acclaimed of Shashi Deshpande's novels. It is about a female protagonist, Indu, who is an educated lady and represents middle class. Indu is a journalist and a writer. The novel deals with the theme of female subjugation. It depicts the way how Indu sets out on her journey of self-realization and eventually sheds her inhibitions. Thus she moves on to the path of liberation. The novel entails the journey of Indu, who attains her feminist identity by crossing over the impediments posited before her by the patriarchy. The novel is a fine study in the psychological working of women as it records with minute details how Indu falls on thinking and retrospection about the past which seems inevitable. The narrator is Indu herself. The narrative technique exploited in the novel is that of flashback. Deshpande shows herself as a master of the narrative form, and her tryst with the pen is incredible. She writes with a luxurious exuberance and the diction is spontaneous. Each word crafted and used in a proper way, adding significance. Indu is the wife of Jayant, whom she had married according to her own will. She had lived under the oppressive silence of Akka, and she always craved for escaping her influence. Thus, when she meets Jayant, she is able to find her own individuality. Her joy has no bounds. With him, it is a new realization of her inner purity, of her sentiments getting new shape. It was like she has found something which provides her utter security. That is why she marries him, irrespective of the fact that the man she is thinking of marrying is altogether different caste and culture. All contradict her stand of marrying him, but she is rock steady. Akka had strongly condemned her marriage. Such marriages never work. Different castes, different languages, it's all right for a while. Then they realize. These are the words of Akka. Perhaps because Akka was against her decision of her getting married to Jayanta, her decision got more firm. It was with him that she could relive her own life. Her first meeting with Jayant was her first realization that she has found someone who is very endearing and the one who understands her fully. She wants to belong, to be wanted, needed, loved, desired, admired. With him, she felt as if she has entered into a new phase of her life, where there are no trials and tribulations, no restrictions, as peace spreading the fragrance of freedom and equality. That was her expectation. This is my real sorrow, that I can never be complete in myself. Until I had met Jayant, I had not known. I met Jayant and lost the ability to be alone. But how unlucky she is. Her earlier notion, and in Jayant I thought I had found the other part of my whole self. Not only that, but total understanding, perfect communication. Proves just an illusion, and she comes to know, and then I had realized that this was an illusion. I had felt cheated, but can perfect understanding ever exist? Understanding means nothing but a kind of a system wherein one believes not to be contradicted, not to be criticized, rather being agreed to whatever one says. Hindu realizes that it was what they even believed in. For them, it is. Don't judge me. Don't criticize me. Just appreciate me. See only my virtues, not my vices, my strengths, not my weaknesses. And she finds herself befitting the role of a traditional woman, whom she hated for the fact that they are so submissive, so meek and docile, rendering themselves identityless. A role that she never heard earlier imagined she would have to play. Hindu sprang out of the claustrophobic world with a courage I admired. She was free, but often to be free is to be lonely. I shared this bleak thought with Hindu. She is not satisfied with her marital life. Something is there which is stifling her. Something that chokes their life. Something grave that really exudes death signal for their nuptial life, and their marriage seems to be on the rocks. After marriage, she continues with her work of journalism, as she does not want to be a passive entity doing nothing at home. Rather, she, as the world is changing, wants to move forward in life so that she should not be a mere parasite on others, rather be independent. But ironically enough, she has to write only those things she never believed in. But she keeps writing all the sham work, even against her scruples. She steps into the shoes of those who only go for the kind of writing which has sound marketing value. She once interviews a lady who seems quite good to her, but she is flummoxed to arrive at her truth. She bickers with the editor, but she is more pained at heart when Jayant, whom she confides what has happened, turns quite hostile to her, saying, "That's life. What can one person do against the whole system? No point making a spectacle of yourself with futile justice. We need the money. Don't forget, we have a long way to go." Hindu feels that by marrying Jayant, her identity has been lost. She is not able to identify her own self. She does all things which Jayant wishes. Shashi Deshpande says in a talk on the Indian woman stereotypes, images and realities. The good woman, whether she is the wife, mother, sister or daughter-in-law, doesn't matter, is always so selfless that she negates herself to the point of extinction. She feels like she has become a parasite on her husband. She has adapted herself according to the traditional values of being an ideal woman. As she reflects, am I on my way to becoming an ideal woman? Hindu is at times quite passionate in the act of love making. Jayant could not digest the fact that a woman can be enthusiastic in love making. Jayant represents a typical patriarchal man who is alarmed at the female sexual needs. For Indian society deems women as meek and passive. It is unbearable fact that a woman can be vociferous in the articulation of her sexual needs, as sex is thought to be a taboo for Indian women. As she recollects, it shocks him to find passion in a woman. It puts him off. A female's quest for sexual pleasures is a taboo in the society. It is a restrictive action even in a marriage. A woman can never openly talk of her sexual satisfaction even with regards to her husband, not to talk of other men. Religion and morality can never uphold it. Sex is only a means of reproduction. Hindu reflects on the question asked by Adya about her being happy with Jayant. Hindu's answer truly informs that the readers that she is not at all happy with him. Who can say that? But I know I can't be without him. Naren asks her why he married her when he does not care about her. Hindu justifies her. It's not that he doesn't care. It's more like we are on different levels. You know, the stage setting they have for some plays nowadays. It's like that. We are on different planes. He chooses his level and I try to choose the one he would like me to be on. It humiliates me. And Naren, it was I who proposed to him. Hindu is confused as she does not know what she wants in life. She is amazed at the question of old uncle also when he asks the same. She keeps thinking what after all she wants and her mind goes back to success. She thinks, what did I want? Success at first. It was impossible, unimaginable for me not to succeed. Not to have been the best would have been unbearable. And suddenly one day, self-conscious has set in, and doubts, they castrate you. They destroy your self-confidence. And there is always a why for whatever you do, so that the doing of it, the succeeding in it, it is not enough. She thinks that she must know what is in life she wants. Without wants, there is nothing in life. All human endeavor to live a satisfactory life would come to an end without any purpose, without any wants. It is only well-defined goals that give life a sanctity. She is confused. How can I live without knowing what I want? I must know. To live without fear, fear of being unloved, misjudged, misunderstood, displeasing, without the fear of failure. Hindu sometimes wants that she would leave him one day. Perhaps that would be the final solution of her problems. She often reflects about its possibility. Her mind oscillates on the possible results. Being a writer, she has even written a short story about the same theme. In the story, the woman walks out on her husband. When a common friend inquires about the reason, she says, "Because I love him too much." But she is not able to bring the story to a conclusion. She believes that such a proposition can never be possible. Society believes that marriage is something that brings two people together. In Hinduism, it is believed that marriage is not about the unification of the bodies, rather, it is the union of two souls. Hindu marriage is not viewed as contracts which two persons, the groom and bride, sign. It is a spiritual bonding where seven circles round the fire are not mere an ostentation but a strengthening of the bond. Seven pledges that both bride and groom have to comply with. It is a sentiment too strong with Deshpande, who believes in its sanctity but is also aware of its seamy side. She knows that it is a trap where a woman finds herself most confined. Hindu visualizes its pros and cons and comes to the conclusion. What was marriage after all? But two people brought together after cold-blooded bargaining to meet, and reproduce so that the generation might continue. The same sentiment is articulated by Hemant. A trap or a cage. Maybe the comic strip version of marriage. A cage with the two trapped animals glaring hatred at each other. Is it so wrong after all? And it's not a joke, but a tragedy. But what animal would cage itself? So, from these, I think all of you understood the life of Indu and her husband Jayant. We already talked about the life of Jayant and Indu in detail in the previous class. Indu also tried to give a solution for her married life by writing a story of a husband and wife. But I think all of you remembered well, she couldn't give a climax because she is afraid of the society. She is thinking about the Hinduism, the concept of marriage in Hinduism. Then that's why she couldn't give a proper climax for her story. And even she identifies that she already lost her identity. She is trying to be a typical housewife. Then we also understood as a husband, Jayant was not at all ready to accept has thoughts relating sex. He feels that a woman can't think and a woman can't speak about sex. So the theme of marriage as a vehicle of female subjugation is very significant theme in Deshpande's all novels and is one of the predominant themes in this novel also. Deshpande is realist to the core and snatches the semblance of fulfillment and the mask of romance that envelops it away. She knows marriage is about commitment, a harmony which is not feasible to find in the modern society. It is an institution which has been prime and potent weapon of patriarchy to maintain control and dominate women. Hindu exposes the very futility of marriage. But marriage, it makes one so dependent. There is no meaning in marriage. Deshpande's heroines feel alienated and marriage seems to them a trap. Hindu reflects that marriage is no surety of anything. Hindu finds that marriage offers no love. Rather, love is a big deception, as she believes it's a big fraud, a hoax. That's what it is. They tell you it's the greatest thing, the only thing in life, and you believe them and fall into the trap. She realizes that only the truth is that of the sexual instinct. That's true. The the maternal instinct. That's true too. Self-interest, self-love, they are the basic truth. Repressed sexual feelings of Hindu find open articulation in seeking extramarital relationship with Naren. She does not feel guilty about it. Even she felt it is bad. At the moment she started to console herself. She finds Naren very compatible. He is the one in whose company she has not to make faces. She finds him very cordial and assuming, as with Naren, I would never have to pretend. He would not be affected by my rejection. Naren cuddles her like a lover. He takes much fancy to her. He feels like a husband to Indu and announces, is it wonderful to be greeted by such words? I feel like an old married man coming home to a loving wife. Their bodies touch. Twice briefly our flesh had touched. Her body is quite responsive to his body. She responds to his physical advances well as. I lost all my senses except one. It was so magnified, as if little nerve ants had sprung up all over my body, and I was, yes, responding to him with ardor and warmth when I realized who it was. She feels utter sadness the day she finds Naren dead by drowning. It was a sense of the utter loneliness of the human spirit that overwhelmed me as I saw Naren lying there, detached, remote, and far removed from us and all our emotions. She finds Naren even endearing, unscarred. Didn't most of us have scars we never revealed, except Naren, who wore his proudly like an old soldier wearing his medals. The novel gains its feminist stance in Indu's exploration into herself, but also moves beyond the boundaries of feminism into a perception of the very predicament of human existence. In the Indian traditional family setup, whatever Hindu has done will never be accepted. She observes Hindu's casual and matter-of-fact attitude to what she had done is shocking. Have our morals really gone so slow that women commit this sin for nothing, just to prove that they do not lack courage? Is this really representative of modern Indian woman? Deshpande, perhaps by having Hindu transgress the boundaries of her marriage, tried to drive home the point that in society there is double standard. Men can take any liberty as far as sexual pleasure are concerned, but a woman should always be chaste and monogamous. In Indian society, it is assumed that even if the husband is of bad moral character, She should never think of another man, but a man can transgress any limits. She does not feel bad about having responded to Naren. She feels she has not done any act of adultery, but in her heart of hearts, she is perplexed as she reflects. Adultery. What nuances of sin the word carries. But she tries to reason. But I had committed no crime. Why did we make of guilt and misery? But she tries to reason. But I had committed no crime. Why did we make such a monstrous thing out of this? Indu thinks what she has done with Naren, and thought comes to her mind that she has cheated on her husband. But she is able to calm herself as she has been cheating on her husband for many years by hiding her own true self. She muses, what then had I achieved by giving him by my body? Apart from wronging Jayant, I winced at the thought. But had I not wronged Jayant even before this, by pretending by giving him spurious coin instead of the genuine kind, I had cheated him of my true self. That I thought is dishonorable, dishonest, much more than this. What I have done with Naren, with whom Indu can be freely sharing her inner feelings. He asks her what happened to her married life. He asks her that there must be something that Jayant had not fulfilled, which Indu wanted. He is so open. What do you expect from Jayant, Indu? You are lying. You do expect something from him, something he is unable to give you. And because you can't get what you want, you are having tantrums like a spoiled child. Indu wanted to be a successful short story writer, but she ended up being a writer for a magazine, writing fillers or interviewing famous ladies. Before talking about this, I want to conclude the relationship between Naren and Indu. I told you it was an illicit relationship, but at the same time, Indu didn't feel it as guilty. She justifies by herself because she believes that she was pretending she is happy with her husband. So she didn't feel it as guilty. About her profession, actually Indu wanted to be a successful short story writer, but she ended up being a writer for a magazine, writing fillers or interviewing famous ladies. Although she did not like the idea of such writing, she could not help it as there were pressure on her. She has to shoulder her family. Her stories had been rejected. But later on, Naren did not like the kind of writing that Indu actually does in her career as a journalist. Naren suggests her to write about female experiences, about her own womanhood. Indu is amazed to hear the word womanhood, and she goes back down to the memory lane and remembers my womanhood. I had never thought of it until the knowledge had been thrust brutally, gracelessly on me. That day I had grown up. Indu felt much hatred for her own womanhood. when she came to know about it. Hindu does not like the atmosphere of the girls' hostel as it is quite feminine. She cultivates hatred for natural biological functions of the female. In India, women are not allowed to enter the kitchen and other holy places during 4 days when they had menses. Hindu was told, for 4 days more you are unclean. You can't touch anyone or anything. Hindu wonders whether what was the example of her womanhood. She wonders that womanhood means being unclean, and that had been by introduction to the beautiful world of being a woman. I was unclean. Deshpande has universalized women's subjugation. It is not only Hindu who is being victim in marriage, but her cousin too. I think all of you remembered well the character Minnie. Minnie, her cousin, finds it difficult to get a groom for herself. Hindu is a modern lady who challenges traditions. Minnie, on the contrary, succumbs to them. Minnie has no choice in marriage. A woman is not given any chance to have her own will. It is a male-dominated society whereby finding a groom for a daughter is the most uphill task. In Indian society, a woman cannot be married without dowry, and here the insurmountable problems for the parents commence. A poor father who cannot even maintain his house and pay for its taxes, how would he arrange a hefty dowry for her daughter in order to get her married? It becomes all the more a convoluted process if would-be bride is not pretty like a movie star. More dowry has to be arranged to assuage the list of the groom and his family who crave for more and more. The situation is aggravating with every passing day. Deshpande, being very realist, has painted before the readers the sample plight of the parents and their daughters. Hindu does not believe in romanticism that marriage offers. Marriage, on the other hand, is a vehicle of patriarchy to subjugate women and their free spirit. Not only Hindu feels uncomfortable, but many other characters in the novel are the victims in marriage. Minnie had no choice in marriage either. She just cannot say no to the man she is going to marry. Her would-be husband is by no means a good choice. As Kaka tells her, he is past his SSLC, went 1 year to college, I think, or maybe he didn't really pass. He is not well educated, he is ugly looking and a bit stupid. Though Minnie has accepted him, but Hindu feels, and then it struck me that there was no joy in her tone. But Minnie defends her choice as she is so fed up with the process of finding a groom for herself. Hindu informs her that marriage does not smell touch, his dislikes. Minnie defends her choice as she is so fed up with the process of finding a groom for herself. Hindu informs her that marriage does not mean anything so trivial as it means living with a man. You have to listen to him, endure his habits, his smell, touch, his likes, his dislikes. You have to sleep with him, bear him children. Can you do all that with this man? Minnie just stupefies Hindu with her answer which carries the eternal wisdom. What choice do I have into? After all, Minnie and many other girls like Minnie have been told time and again. Ever since we were small, we were told, you will be going away one day to your own home. It doesn't matter whether they have any suitable partners or not by marriage, is in itself a well-defined goal which they have to achieve. Hindu reflects on the notion expressed by me. If they would come to know that the boy belongs to old-fashioned and traditional family, Minnie was dressed up in traditional clothes. But the boy's family used to find faults that she is not very modern. When they come to know that the boy is modern and she would dress up accordingly, they would say she is too modern for us. And Minnie was rejected. She was so sad that she felt, I had committed a great crime by being born a girl. When Hindu talks to Kaka regarding the man they have selected for Minnie, he defends himself. What does that matter? He doesn't need a job. They have plenty. He can live in comfort like a lord on what they have. And what's the use of these degrees? Can they guarantee a job? On Hindu's request that they can wait for some time in order to find a suitable match, Kaka says, we had to wait long enough for this one. Padmini is past 24 now, and there is her horoscope. And the problem of finding a family with a status comparable to us. And when everything clicks, there is dowry hurdle. What am I to do? Let the girl stay unmarried. It's all right as long as I am alive. When I am gone, can you see her brothers looking after her? Maybe the boy is a little ugly, maybe a little stupid, but everything else is fine. So I think all of you got a clear picture about Padmini's life. He was not at all educated well. He didn't have a particular job. But he says that the groom has the property. Definitely he can live just like a lord. More than that, he is over concerned about the age of Padmini. She is now 24. And after the death of Kaka, who will take care of my daughter? That's the question he asked. So that is the belief of the society. Each and every time a woman should be protected by a man. It may be her husband, it may be her father, or it may be her son, like that. She can't live independent. That is the patriarchy. So there is no way for Minnie to accept and to marry the man who find out by her father. In India, girls are taken to be burden on their parents. The liability, as she is considered, is thought to be fulfilled when parents get their daughters easily married. Then they have a sigh of relief. Kaki could not contain her gaiety as it was the grand finale she has been impatiently waiting for of Padmini's marriage. That is why Kamala Kaki tells Vinayak Kaka that he should be very anxious of finding suitable matches for his daughters. She angrily announces, boasting about their size when you should be worrying about it. Don't forget you have to start looking for husbands for them in few years. and you don't even have any money to offer as bait. Giant feels that women have oodles of inner strength behind the facade of wailing faces. The reality is something contrary. Women are not weak, rather they are strong enough. They can go through anything. But the idea had different implications for Indu. She could really find different meanings under the veil of strength, looking through a different perspective than that of Jayant. She could perceive the suffering women. They are suffering endlessly and quiet stoically. They had to compromise to their situation. But the reality is they have no other alternative left to them than to endure. Inner strength. I thought of the words as I looked down on Minnie's bowed head. A woman's life, they had told me, contained no choices. And all my life, especially in this house, I had seen the truth of this. The women had no choice but to submit, to accept, and I often wondered, had they been born without wills, or have their wills atrophied through a lifetime of disuse? Hindu observes that her female relations have been blindfolded by patriarchal designs so that they may never see any choices. Hindu is amazed at the fact that many of the women folk at her home, like that of her maid, have imbibed the patriarchal norms so much that for them the only criteria of success is only the terms of being married, having born children and grandchildren. At the same time, Hindu is a realist. She believes that even after her decision to improve her condition, she has not achieved her aim of gaining complete happiness. She cannot keep imagining that everything is right, but to some extent she expects less from him. She is blessed with a new understanding, and as such, I want to be louder, I want to be happy. Neither love nor happiness does come to us for the asking, but they can sneak upon us when we least expect them. He knows Indu better now as she has torn apart the veneer of keeping herself hidden. She has let her open now, thus the part which was not visible to Jayant before is now transparent for Jayant to see. There is an ease in our relationship that was not there before. Indu thus visualizes here in this house, in this family, was a role waiting for me, a role that I could perhaps act out more successfully than the one I had tried until now. For had I not so very often felt myself just a mouthing, grimacing puppet, dully saying the lines I had to feeling actually nothing. Hindu contemptuously calls an Indian woman a martyr, a heroine, just a stupid fool carrying a world of darkness in herself. A pure female animal, a subordinate creature of a new world filled with ignorance, prejudices, and superstition, or a typical breed only interested in getting married, bearing children, having sons and then grandchildren. She is not only the woman who suffers a lot in her marital life. Vidal's mother is a meek, silent, and suffering wife who has been a victim of the sadistic anger of her husband. Indu learns from old uncle, Vidal's father, a grim man who rarely spoke and never smiled. There was a streak of cruelty in him that came out in his relations with his meek, silent wife. The boy, as a child, had been frequent spectator of scenes in which the father had worked out his sadistic anger on the mother for the merest trifles. Unable to bear physical cruelty and mental torture, finally she leaves her marital home, her husband and son. So, Vidal's mother, she is another victim of patriarchal society. So, I think it's enough for today's class. So, we will continue Roots and Shadows in our next class. Thank you.